The text came in at 1:07 in the morning. Come over, please say, now. 2 typos, no punctuation, from Mara Quinn, who I had known for 10 years and who had never once texted me after midnight. So I drove across town with my heart doing arithmetic it had no business doing, and she opened the door before I knocked. Stone cold sober, dressed, lights off behind her, and said, I meant every word. Get inside before you're on camera. I want to walk you back through that sentence, because every part of it detonated separately. I meant every word, sober, steady, looking me dead in the eye. Before you're on camera, and her hand closing around my jacket, pulling me over the threshold, and the deadbolt going over behind me like a period at the end of a sentence I didn't understand yet. Mara, what? The typos were for him, she said. Sober me texting you at 1 in the morning means something's wrong. Drunk me texting you means nothing. He'd skim it and move on. It had to look like nothing, Eli. Who's him? Who skims your texts? And Mara Quinn, chef and co-owner of Saltbox, the restaurant she'd built from a gutted laundromat into the hardest reservation in the county, the woman I'd been quietly, uselessly in love with for approximately 9 of the 10 years I'd known her, walked to her kitchen table, turned her phone face down like it was a witness, and slid a letter across the wood to me instead. Law firm letterhead. I read it twice. My name is Eli Brandt. I'm a bookkeeper, freelance, forensic when somebody pays me to be, and I read financial threats for a living, and this one was beautiful. It said that an internal review had identified approximately $243,000 in unexplained transfers from Saltbox LLC accounts under the operational control of M. Quinn. It said the findings would be presented to the partnership at a special meeting, Friday at 10 a.m., 6 days away. And it said that her partner was prepared to refer the matter to the district attorney's financial crimes unit, unless Ms. Quinn executed the enclosed agreement transferring her membership interest and stepping away from the business, in which case the partnership was amenable to resolving this internally. Signed, with a signature I'd seen on wine lists and ribbon cuttings and, once, regrettably, a Valentine's dinner reservation for 2. Victor Hale. Her business partner. Her ex. He's stealing my restaurant, Mara said, with my own books. And you're the only person I know who can read them faster than he can lie about them. So, she finally sat down and for 1 second, the chef's posture cracked and I saw how scared she was, and then it was gone, welded back over. 6 days, Eli. Friday at 10. Help me. I looked at the letter. I looked at her phone, face down. I looked at the blinds, which were closed, in a house where she never closed them. Start with the cameras, I said. Whose cameras, Mara? Why can't I be seen coming here? She smiled with no joy in it at all. That's day 2 material. You're going to want to be sitting down, and you're going to want to be angry in the right order. Stay with me, because she was right about the order. Over the next 6 days, I found 4 things buried in that restaurant's books, each one worse than the last. And the last one wasn't about money at all. It was about a man who doesn't steal restaurants. He harvests them. And Mara wasn't the first crop. Here's what you need to know about the 3 of us, and I'll keep it short because the setup is never the story. 10 years ago, Mara was a line cook with a folder of recipes, and I was the guy doing payroll for the bistro that underpaid us both. We became the kind of friends who talk every day and touch never. 4 years ago, Victor Hale showed up. Investor, charmer, the kind of man who wears a watch that costs more than your car and makes you feel like he's doing you a favor by knowing you. And he did 2 things fast. He funded Saltbox, and he dated Mara. I watched both happen from the cheap seats, and I want to be honest with you about what I saw, because it matters for everything that comes. Victor was good. He remembered your kid's name. He picked up every check. He introduced Mara at openings as the genius, and himself as just the wallet. And the room always laughed, and it took me 2 years to notice that every sentence he ever spoke about her was secretly a sentence about ownership. The restaurant outlived the relationship. The partnership on paper was clean. Mara 40%, Victor 40 and 20 split between the Levins. A retired couple who invested their pension because they loved her food and treated Mara like the daughter who'd finally called home. And Dr. Osei, a cardiologist who came in twice a week and always ordered the trout. Which meant Friday's meeting wasn't theater. If Victor convinced that 20% that Mara was a thief, they'd vote with him, and the DA letter would do the rest. At 7 the next morning, my phone buzzed. Mara, he just texted me. Screenshot. Victor, saw the special meeting notice went out. This can still end quietly, M. You know I've always protected you. Don't make me stop. I've always protected you. Remember that line? It comes back. I texted back, I'm coming to the restaurant today as your bookkeeper friend helping with payroll. Boring cover story. Act annoyed that I'm there. Her reply came in 4 seconds. Won't be hard. You hum when you do spreadsheets. That's the woman I drove across town for at 1 in the morning. I want that on the record. Saltbox at 9 a.m. smells like bread and bleach and ambition. Mara put me at the back office desk with a coffee and a performance of reluctance. Fine, but don't touch my seating chart. And I opened the books. And friends, I have to tell you what forensic bookkeeping actually is, because movies lie to you. It is not a montage. It is reading 11 months of vendor invoices until your eyes are sand, waiting for one number to be wearing the wrong shoes. At 2:40 p.m., I found the shoes. A produce vendor called Coastline Provisions, invoiced twice a month, $8,000 to $11,000 a pop, always just under the threshold that required a second signature. Clean invoices. Too clean. Real vendor invoices have crooked stamps and coffee rings, and a guy named Sal's cell number scrawled on them. These looked like they'd been born in a laser printer that morning. And Saltbox's actual produce came from 2 farms I could see on every other page. So what was Coastline providing? I called the number on the invoice. Disconnected. I looked up the address. A UPS store mailbox 2 towns over. 11 months of Coastline Provisions came to $241,600. The missing money wasn't missing. It had been ordered, like a case of lemons, and it had walked out the front door wearing an invoice. And then I did the thing that made it human, and I wish I could tell you it felt like victory. I called Sal, the real produce guy, the one whose crooked stamps and coffee rings were all over the legitimate pages, because I wanted to know if he'd ever heard of Coastline. Sal picked up on the second ring, and before I got a question out, he unloaded on me. You calling about the contract? Because I already told the other guy, 22 years I've delivered to that block, 22, and now I get a letter saying my account's under review for consolidation with a preferred vendor? Ask Mara if I ever shorted her 1 crate. 1. I sat there holding the phone. Victor hadn't just invented a fake vendor to bleed the accounts. He'd already drafted the paperwork to replace the real one, to hand Sal's 22 years to a mailbox in a UPS store, dated for the week after Friday's vote. He was so certain of winning that he'd started renovating the future. I told Sal to sit tight, keep that letter, and deliver Friday like always. Deliver what? He said. Everything, I said. Friday's going to be a big service. I was photographing the 3rd invoice when the office door opened without a knock, and Victor Hale filled the doorway the way expensive men do, like the room had been waiting for them. Eli Brandt, he said, warm as a heat lamp. Payroll, Mara tells me. Good of you. She needs her friends right now. I assume she's told you we're having some difficulties. He came in, sat on the corner of the desk, on top of my papers, deliberately, and lowered his voice into the register men use when they want a threat to sound like advice. A word, though. Friend to friend. There's about to be a legal process here. Forensic accountants, real ones, from a real firm, are involved. It would be a shame if a freelancer's fingerprints turned up all over evidence. The DA might wonder which side of the fraud the fingerprints were on. You understand. He stood, straightened his cuff, smiled. Chefs cook, partners count, everybody's happier in their own kitchen. And he left, and I sat there and realized my hands were flat on the desk to keep them still, and I understood something about the last 4 years. Mara hadn't stayed in business with this man because she was blind. She'd stayed because he holds every room he walks into like a mortgage. That night she came to my place. Her idea. His cameras don't live at your place. And I showed her the Coastline invoices, and she went white, and then she went cold. And then she said, okay, day 2 material. Sit down, Eli. When Victor and I were together, Mara said, he set up everything. That's his love language. Infrastructure. My laptop, my phone, my cloud account, the restaurant systems, the alarm, the cameras. He called it taking care of me. When we split, I changed my passwords. She laughed, one dry note. You know what you can't change with a password? The recovery email. The device management profile he installed so IT could help me remotely. The camera system registered to his account with me as a guest user. Eli, 3 weeks ago I wrote a note to myself, a private note, on my own phone, about maybe talking to a lawyer. 2 days later, Victor mentioned, in passing, over the pass, that lawyers churn fees on partnership disputes and always make things worse. He was smiling when he said it. He wanted me to know. I took her phone and her laptop and I did what I do, but with settings instead of ledgers, and it was all there, tidy as a filing cabinet. A mobile device management profile with administrator rights issued 4 years ago, cloud backups syncing nightly to an account whose recovery address was, I'll never forget scrolling to it, V. Hailed asses at he hadn't even bothered with a fake name. Her texts, her notes, her photos, her location, 4 years. That's why the drunk typo text. That's why come over had to look like nothing. She had been composing her real messages inside a monitored room for 4 years and had learned to write in a code of 1. How long have you known? I asked. For sure? 3 weeks. Suspected? She looked at the window. You don't want the real answer, and I don't want to say it in front of you, because you'll look at me the way you're about to look at me. Longer, Eli. I suspected longer. And I stayed, because the Levins put their pension in this restaurant and Dr. Osei co-signed the kitchen loan and 40 other people get a paycheck from my food, and I thought if I just kept my head down and cooked, he'd stay bored. Instead, he got hungry. And right then, I am not embellishing this, ask my heart rate. Her phone rang on the table between us. Victor. At 11:40 p.m., we both froze like the phone could see us, which, we had just established, was not entirely paranoid. Mara held up one finger, breathed once, and answered on speaker, in a voice so bored it deserved an award. Victor, it's late. Couldn't sleep, he said, warm, unhurried. Wanted to check on you. This week must be so stressful. A pause, timed like a knife going in. You're not at home. Her location. 4 years of her location. Mara didn't miss a beat. I'm at Eli's. He's helping me pull payroll records so your review doesn't cost 40 people their paychecks. Some of us think about the staff. Silence on the line. The sound of a man deciding whether the story he'd been fed matched the story he preferred. Then, of course, that's very like you. Sleep well, Em. Big week. Click. Mara set the phone down like it was a hot pan and looked at me, and neither of us said anything for a moment, because there's a specific silence that follows realizing you are inside an aquarium and the man outside the glass has just tapped it, twice, to watch you move. Here's the moment I want you to clip and keep. I reached over to close the laptop and she caught my wrist and said, "Don't you dare pity me. Pity is just surveillance with better manners. I don't need another man watching me. I need one standing next to me. Can you tell the difference?" "I've been standing next to you for 10 years, I said. "You're the one who never looked over." The kitchen went very quiet. Mara Quinn looked at me the way she looks at a dish that's finally seasoned right, and said, "Day 6, Eli. Ask me anything you want on day 6. If we still have a restaurant." Then she opened the laptop back up, cracked her knuckles like a safecracker, and said the sentence that turned the whole war around. "He can read everything on this machine, so let's start deciding what he reads." We didn't sleep much, the next 4 days. Neither did Victor, but he didn't know that yet. Wednesday morning he escalated, because men like Victor smell resistance the way sharks smell arithmetic. Mara's business banking access, suspended, pending the review. Her company card, declined at the fish market in front of 2 other chefs, which was the point. Humiliation was the product, the decline was just packaging. By noon, there was a commercial realtor walking Saltbox's dining room with a tape measure and a man in a gray suit Victor introduced, loudly, to the lunch staff as a gentleman exploring the space's potential, a buyer. Before the vote had even happened. He wasn't waiting to win Friday, he was catering it. And at 6 p.m., the screen intrusion, right on schedule, an email to all 4 partners plus Mara, subject line, special meeting, materials, attaching his firm's forensic review, 31 pages, professionally bound in PDF, concluding with the phrase, "A consistent pattern of misappropriation attributable to the managing chef partner." He'd CC'd his lawyer. He'd BCC'd, I'd bet my license, the buyer. The report did exactly what it was built to do. At 7:15, Mrs. Levin called Mara in tears, not accusing, worse than accusing, apologizing. "Sweetheart, we know there must be an explanation. Herb and I just, it's our whole retirement, Mara. You understand, we have to hear both sides Friday." And Mara said of course, "And I love you both," and hung up and stood at the sink for a full minute with the water running over her hands. Then Dr. Osei texted, surgical as ever, "The report is professionally prepared. If you have a response, it had better be equally rigorous. I don't vote on loyalty, I vote on evidence." Mara read it out loud, and God help me, she smiled. Good, she said. Because evidence is the one thing Victor's been kind enough to manufacture in bulk. That 31-page report is where he made his first real mistake. But I didn't find it Wednesday night. Wednesday night, we drove 90 minutes east because of a name I'd pulled that afternoon and couldn't let go of. Here's what happened. Chasing Coastline through the state's business registry, I'd searched every entity that shared its registered agent, and one of them was a dissolved LLC attached to a restaurant called the Copper Door. 5 years dead, 2 counties over. The news archive gave me the obituary: a promising bistro, a financial scandal, a chef partner named Danny Reyes who pleaded to misdemeanor bookkeeping charges, and a minority investor who salvaged the property out of the wreckage at 40 cents on the dollar. The investor's name in the article had made Mara put her coffee down very, very slowly. Danny Reyes answered his door like he'd been expecting us for 5 years. He works a hotel line now, dinner shift, a man who used to have his name over a door and now has it on a name tag, and he sat us in his kitchen and listened to Mara for 10 minutes without interrupting, and when she finished he laughed once, not a good laugh, and said, "Coastline." Ours was called Harborline Supply. Same mailbox town? I nodded. He got up, went to a closet, and came back with a banker's box he had never unpacked and never thrown away, because men who take pleas they don't deserve keep their boxes. Invoices, he said. Copies of everything my lawyer said we couldn't afford to fight. The cousin's name is in there too. I begged people to look at it, but Victor had the clean report and the good suit, and I had a public defender and a friar accent. So you tell me how that vote went. He looked at Mara for a long moment, chef to chef. You want to know what he is? Everybody thinks he steals restaurants. He doesn't steal restaurants. He harvests them. He plants money in you, waits for you to grow the place with your back and your name, and then he strips it at 40 cents and moves to the next field. I was the last field, chef. You're this one. He pushed the box across the table to me. 5 years I kept this for nobody. Take it. And when you get him in that room Friday, his voice went rough for the first time, make him say my restaurant's name. We drove home after midnight with a dead restaurant in the back seat, and Mara stared out the window at the dark and finally said, "It was never about my books, Eli. My books were just this season's soil." Then, quieter, "The Levins are the next Danny. If Friday goes wrong, that's their pension in a banker's box in a closet." And I understood right then why she'd texted "come over" instead of running. Some people fight because they're brave, and some fight because they've done the math on who falls if they don't. The metadata mistake came the following night. First, the trap. Because Tuesday night on Mara's monitored laptop, we had typed a note, casual, believable, exactly her voice. Ask Eli. Old POS backups plus original vendor files still in storage unit 114. Get before Friday. Only real copies left. Storage unit 114 was real. It was mine. It contained, as of Tuesday night, 1 folding chair, 1 battery camera I'd mounted behind the vent grate, and 1 cardboard box labeled Salt Box Records containing 3 phone books and a bag of flour. Bait, friends. When a man has read your private words for 4 years and never been caught, he stops asking whether what he reads is true. His certainty was the one system we could hack back. Thursday afternoon, right on schedule, came the last kindness. Victor called Mara, not texted, called, because final offers deserve a voice, and we put him on speaker in the empty dining room while the prep kitchen clattered behind the doors. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. I want you to picture the room before you walk into it. The Levins, hearing about $250,000. Reading a bound report, your name in a DA referral by Monday, or a paper rustled theatrically, he'd rehearse this. You sign tonight, I announce you're stepping back to focus on new projects. The staff keeps their jobs, and in a year, nobody remembers any of it. I'm offering you the version where you're a chef who moved on instead of a chef who got caught. It expires at midnight. I've always protected you, Mara. This is the last time I can. Mara looked at the phone for a moment. Then she said sweetly, Victor, order the trout tomorrow. It's Dr. Osei's favorite, and you're going to want the room on your side. And hung up on him mid-breath and stood there grinning at me like the midnight deadline was a birthday, because we both knew something Victor didn't. In about 9 hours, his cousin had an appointment with a vent grate. Thursday, 11:52 p.m. 6 words from the camera app lit my phone. Motion detected, Unit 1114. We watched the clip together at my kitchen table at midnight. Mara's shoulder against mine, both of us barely breathing. And I want to note, for the historical record, that we had been strictly professional co-conspirators for 5 straight days, and it took a felony on a nanny cam to get her shoulder against mine, and I regret nothing. The overhead light of the storage corridor, a figure at the roll-up door of 114, not Victor. Victor doesn't carry things, but a man we both recognized, Victor's cousin Denny, who did facilities work for Victor's properties, opening the padlock with a key, not bolt cutters, a key, cut from the spare Mara kept in the restaurant office, the office Victor had a camera in. Denny walked in, found the box, opened it, held up a phone book, looked at it for a long moment with the expression of a man realizing he is on the wrong page of someone else's story, and then looked directly up at the vent grate. "He's seen the camera," I whispered. "No," Mara said slowly. "He's looking for a camera." Because that's what he'd do. That's what this whole family does. They assume everyone's them. Denny didn't find it. He took the box of phone books anyway, theft on tape, of bait, with a copied key, and left. And I saved the footage to 3 places and emailed it to a 4th. And Mara sat back and said, "Coastline Provisions. Pull the state registration. Look for the registered agent." I already had it open. Coastline Provisions LLC. Registered agent, Dennis Hale. The cousin. The same cousin now starring in a midnight film about a storage unit. But here's what I actually want to tell you about Thursday night. The reveal underneath the reveal. While Mara made 1 a.m. eggs because nobody strategizes hungry, I finally sat down with Victor's 31-page forensic report. Really sat with it, the way you sit with a ledger. And I checked the PDF's metadata. Document created. A date stamp that mattered so much I read it 5 times. Victor's report, the one responding to a pattern of theft discovered last month, had been created 11 weeks ago, before more than $60,000 of the Coastline invoices had even been issued. He hadn't investigated a crime. He'd written the ending first, and then catered the crime to match the report. Premeditation, time-stamped, in a document he himself had mailed to every partner and his own lawyer. "Mara," I said, "he drafted your guilt before he finished manufacturing it." She set down the spatula. She was quiet for a long moment. And then she said the thing that told me we'd stopped playing defense. "Then Friday isn't his meeting anymore. It's mine. He just doesn't know he's the tasting menu." Friday morning, one more door opened that I didn't expect, and I'd be lying if I left it out, because for about an hour it nearly broke us. At 7 a.m., Tomas, Mara's sous chef of 5 years, the man who ran her kitchen like a second spine, was waiting in the restaurant's back lot, and he couldn't look at her. He put his phone in her hands. On it, months of texts from Victor. Instructions. Tell me who she meets. Photograph the office desk after close. Did the bookkeeper come back? And Tomas's replies, short, miserable, compliant. Mara read them with a face like a walk-in freezer. He found out about my brother's loan, Tomas said. The one I co-signed. He bought the debt, chef. And he bought it. And then he told me what happens to my family's house if I didn't keep him informed. I told him nothing that mattered. I swear on my knives. I told him you worked late and drank coffee. But I told him something, and I can't carry it into your kitchen one more day. I watched Mara Quinn stand in a parking lot, holding proof that her own kitchen had been compromised, 90 minutes before the fight of her life. And I watched her hand the phone back and say, "You're going to forward every one of those to Eli, and then you're going to prep lunch service, because we open at 11:30. And Tomas, you told him what he asked. You just never told him what mattered. There's a difference, and it's the difference between what he does and what we do. Now go cut the fish." That's the boss she is. And that's how, at 9:40 a.m., our packet gained its final page. Victor Hale, in his own typed words, coercing an employee, keep him informed, with a purchased debt as the knife. At 9:55, we walked into the private dining room. Victor at the head of the table, of course. His lawyer at his elbow, the bound reports fanned out like menus. The Levins holding hands, looking heartbroken already. Dr. Osei, arms folded, and a chair pulled out, waiting for Mara, positioned, I noticed because you notice everything on days like this, directly under the room's camera. "Mara," Victor said, gently, sadly, magnanimously. "A man burying a beloved pet. Please, sit. This is hard for all of us." "I'll stand," Mara said. I brought a guest and a projector. As managing partner, I'm exercising my right under Section 6.2 to present financial information to the partnership. She looked at him pleasantly. You drafted our operating agreement, Victor. I finally read it. Every word. I'll give you the meeting the way it deserves, as a plated tasting, course by course, because that's how she served it. Course 1, Coastline Provisions. 11 months of laser-perfect invoices on the screen, then the disconnected phone, then the UPS store address, then the state registration, registered agent, Dennis Hale, and I watched the Levins' faces move from grief to confusion to the very beginning of anger, which is the correct order. Course 2, the metadata. Victor's own 31-page report on the left of the screen, its creation timestamp on the right, the invoice dates underneath, $61,000 of them post-dating the report that discovered them. Dr. O.C., a man who reads echocardiograms for a living, got there fastest. He looked at Victor and said quietly, You wrote the autopsy before the patient was sick. Course 3, the film, Unit 1114, 1152 p.m., Dennis Hale, the copied key, the box, the vent grate stare. Victor's lawyer stopped taking notes. Lawyers stopping note-taking is its own exhibit. Course 4, Tomas's phone, keep him informed. The purchase debt. The Levins' anger arriving fully plated now. Mrs. Levin actually stood up. Because you can maybe spin invoices, but nobody spins I bought your sous chef's family debt to spy on your partner. And Course 5, the one we'd driven 90 minutes east for and saved for last. Coastline wasn't the first. The same registered agent, the same UPS town mailbox, sitting in the records of a restaurant called The Copper Door, 5 years dead, whose chef partner, a man named Danny Reyes, pleaded to misdemeanor bookkeeping charges he couldn't afford to fight while Victor Hale, minority partner, bought the building out of the wreckage at 40 cents on the dollar. Danny's banker's box was open on the table in front of me. Harborline Supplies invoices fanned out beside Coastlines, twins separated by 5 years and 1 county line. His affidavit, notarized at 8 a.m. that morning, was the last slide, and Mara read its closing line aloud to the room, because she'd made Danny a promise in his kitchen. The Copper Door was my restaurant. He took it the same way. Don't let him say my name was the crooked one. 2 restaurants. Same play. Same cousin. Same harvest. The room turned to Victor Hale, and Victor did the thing I will study for the rest of my life. He smiled, spread his hands, and reached for the room one final time. This is creative. Genuinely. But it's a bookkeeper's collage, assembled by Mara's boyfriend. Let's be adults about what he is, and when the DA's office looks at actual, please, Mara said, finish that sentence. And she set her phone on the table, screen up, on speaker, already ringing, and a voice answered, Financial Crimes, Investigator Ruiz. Good morning, Mara said, eyes never leaving Victor. Mara Quinn. We spoke Wednesday. I'm at the partnership meeting now. The full packet went to your office an hour ago, along with a copy to the IRS, since Coastline's invoices were deducted as business expenses. You asked me to call if Mr. Hale wanted to add a statement. She slid the phone 6 inches toward him. Victor, add a statement. Victor Hale looked at the phone the way Denny had looked into that cardboard box, a man discovering he is on the wrong page of someone else's story. He did not add a statement. His lawyer requested a recess. The partnership denied it, 4 votes to nothing pending, and by noon, Victor had signed what his own letter had drafted for Mara 6 days earlier, a transfer of his membership interest, at a valuation Dr. Osei described as corrective, because the alternative was defending 2 restaurants' worth of pattern in front of a jury of people who tip. At the door, because his kind always needs the last word, he turned and tried for one. You'll fail inside a year without my... Victor, Mara said, tying on her apron, already done with him, already turning toward the kitchen and the lunch service and the rest of her life. Chef's cook. Run along and count. The DA's office took it from there, and took it seriously. Danny Reyes's old plea is under review. Dennis Hale is cooperating with the enthusiasm of a man shown his own midnight film, and the IRS, I'm told, has a particular appetite for laser-perfect invoices. The Levins' pension is whole. Mrs. Levin now introduces Mara to strangers as our daughter, essentially, and Herb has appointed himself unofficial door greeter on Friday nights, a job he performs with the gravity of a Supreme Court bailiff. Dr. Osei bought 2 of Victor's forfeited points at the corrective valuation and celebrated by ordering, for the first time in 4 years, something other than the trout, then sent it back and got the trout. Sal delivers Monday and Thursday, 22 years and counting, and his contract now has a clause Mara wrote in herself, in pen, at the bottom. This account is not, and will never be, under review. Danny Reyes drove down for the reopening, stood in the doorway of a working kitchen for a long minute like a man testing whether it would hold his weight, and then Mara handed him an apron and put him on the pass next to Tomas, who runs the kitchen with his name newly on the door as chef de cuisine, because Mara Quinn pays her debts in the currency people actually need. The device profiles came off her phone and laptop the same afternoon Victor signed, and she stood in her kitchen watching 4 years of surveillance uninstall itself, and she didn't cry, but she opened every window in the house. Which brings me to day 6. She'd said it herself, ask me anything you want on day 6, but she beat me to it, because that Saturday at 1:07 a.m., the exact minute, and don't tell me that's coincidence, the woman plates with tweezers. My phone lit up. Come over. No typos. I drove across town with my heart doing arithmetic it was finally allowed to finish. She opened the door before I knocked, sober, barefoot, every light in the house on and every window open, and she was holding her phone out to me, and on the screen was her drafts folder. Dozens of messages, years of them. Typed to me and never sent, dated birthdays and bad nights, and one dated 10 years ago last spring. You hummed while you fixed my paycheck today, and I think that's when I knew. All of them written, she told me, and then deleted from her sent life, but never from her drafts, because drafts were the one room in her house he never thought to watch. I couldn't send them, she said. For 4 years, anything I sent, he read. So I want you to hear the sober version, out loud, on my doorstep, where the only camera left is the moon. Eli. Every drunk text was fake. Every word in them was real. Come over meant come over. It always meant come over. And now, I managed, Mara Quinn took my wrist, chef's grip, the one that's carried stockpots in this whole story, and pulled me across the threshold, and said against my collar, in the voice she uses when the dish is finally right. Now it means stay. I stayed. I'm writing this from her kitchen table, which is now, technically also my kitchen table, a merger that required no lawyers, no valuation, and exactly 1 drawer cleared out for my things. She's humming. She claims she doesn't hum. The evidence, as always, is on my side, and this time, I'm keeping the originals. So now I need something from you, down in the comments, because this story only matters if it isn't only ours. If someone you trusted had quiet access to everything you wrote, every text, every note, every unsent draft, how long do you think it would take you to notice, and what's the first thing you'd stop writing? And here's the harder one, the real one. Is there a message sitting in your drafts right now, or one you deleted years ago, that you typed to someone and never had the courage to send? Tell me who it was for. Tell me what it said. You don't have to send it to them. But somebody scrolling this comment section at 1:07 a.m. needs to see that they're not the only one with a full drafts folder and an empty doorstep. If this one kept you up, subscribe and hit the bell, because next week I'm telling you about the anonymous review that nearly killed Saltbox's reopening. Written, we discovered, from an IP address inside a house that had been empty for 2 years. Send the text, be the doorstep, and when someone opens the door sober, believe them.